Hi, and welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to review factoring trinomials. Okay, so if you look at here, this is what we call the expanded or standard form. And on the right here is the factored form. So a lot of the skills we're going to be working on this semester are going to require you to get a trinomial into the factored form. Okay, so hopefully this is a review or refresher for you. Okay, but if you're struggling, make sure you get some help so that you'll have this skill when you need it throughout this semester. So if you look at this first example here, we have z squared minus 11z plus 18. Okay, and what we're going to do is work this into factored form, which will be two binomials. Okay, and one thing I've got down here in the tips, okay, is I'm saying always check for a GCF. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But I'm also giving you this tip with the signs down here. So if you have a trinomial that, like for this one, it has a minus and then a plus, okay, that's actually the second one here, and it's always going to, in the binomials, it's going to be minus, minus, okay? So I know my signs are going to be minus, minus, okay? Now, this first term right here, this first term, I obviously have a z being squared, and that tells me that I need a z in the front here and a z in the front here. Okay, now this last term, the 18, I can get an 18 by doing 6 times 3. I can get an 18 by doing 2 times 9. I can get an 18 by doing 18 times 1. So I have several options here. So the idea is I need to pick the combination of numbers that will also give me this middle term when I multiply these binomials together. So you're sort of thinking about how your choices in your numbers and how those will multiply out once you have this in factored form. So the numbers that work here are going to be the 2 and the 9. Okay, and I'll show you why. If we were to multiply this out, I've got z times z, which is the z squared. And then I'm going to do the outside, z times the negative 9 minus 9z. The inside, which is going to be negative 2z. And then the last terms, which will give me an 18. And then if I was to combine like terms here in the middle, I have that negative 11z, which is what, right? Which is what we needed, okay? So think of factoring sort of like a puzzle as far as when you are doing these trinomials, that you are figuring out what numbers go in these four places so that when you multiply this back out, you're going to get back to what you started with, that z squared minus 11z plus 18. It takes some practice and sometimes it takes some patience. You do get better at it as you go along. Students are always amazed at how good they get at factoring when they practice and work at it. But like I said, it's sort of like a puzzle. You're sort of trying to figure out the combination of numbers to make this all work. Okay, so that is factored. The z minus 2 times the z minus 9, that is factored form. If you look at number 2, we've got another trinomial here, obviously. We have an x being squared, okay? And so in the front, I'm going to have an x and an x, okay? Now to get the negative 5, okay, I need to think about that I can get negative 5 by doing negative 5 times a positive 1 or a positive 5 times a negative 1. And then I have to be very careful with how I place those numbers, okay? So if I was to place it as negative 5 and positive 1, Okay, this is not the correct answer, by the way, but I'm going to show you why it's not correct. I would have x times x, which is x squared. On the outside, when I multiply the outside terms, I get an x. Inside terms, I get a minus 5x. And then the last terms, I get a negative 5. And when I combine like terms there, I get a negative 4x. But I need a positive 4x. So my signs are, I've got the 4, but I don't have the correct sign. So that's an indication there that you probably have your signs backwards in your factorization. So oops, sorry about that. Let's change some things around here. Let's switch those numbers. So we've got here, I'm going to put the 1 with the minus and the 5 with the plus and see if this is correct. So if I multiply x times x, I've got x squared. My outside terms, I'm going to get a 5x. Inside, minus 1x. Last, minus 5. And there is that positive 4x. Okay, so now I am correctly factored. Okay, and like I said, you just have to be very careful thinking about all the numbers and how they need to fit together so that you have the correct factorization. In number 3 here, you have a GCF, okay? And that's another thing that is in your tips down here is always check for a GCF, okay? And that's greatest common factor, obviously. So that means that each of these terms have a factor of 9, and I want to factor that out before I do any other factoring. So I'm dividing that 9 out of each term. So I'm going to have x squared minus 4x minus 5. All right, and then I want to continue factoring. All right, now this one's very similar to the one we just did, but I have to be careful with my signs once again. I'm going to have the x and the x, and this time I do want the minus with the 5 and the plus with the 1, and then just don't forget that 9 needs to stay in the front. Okay, and then that is the factorization, okay? But getting that 9 factored out is really important because it makes your other factoring steps a lot easier because you have gotten the numbers smaller because you've divided that 9 out. So that makes the factoring a lot easier. Okay, so let's keep moving along here. This is number 4. Okay, now this is another one where you can use that little sign trick that I showed you in number 1. And that is you have that second option where you know the signs are going to be minus, minus. Okay, so let's go ahead and think about that. Actually, I'm going to leave a little space here. Come down. So it's going to be minus, minus. All right. Now, in the front, okay, so I'm trying to figure out what goes in the front of my binomials here. It's going to be a result from using this 10x squared. Now, I need to think about combinations that give me a 10x squared. So I can do a 5x times a 2x, or I could do a 10x times an x, and both of those combinations would give me a 10x squared, okay? So I don't know quite yet which one I'm going to use, all right? I have to figure that out here in a minute, but those are the options I need to consider. So when I am working on my, let's get these out of here first. So when I'm working on this last term here, okay, which is going to feed the numbers that go in the last spots of the trinomial, I need to think about options that give me a 6, a positive 6. So it's like 2 times 3, right? Or I can do a 6 times 1. Okay, those are both options that would multiply to be a 6. Okay, and once again, I don't know quite which one I'm going to use yet, but I'm going to consider those options when I figure the numbers out. So then I have to carefully consider all of my options so that I'm also going to get this negative 19x when it's multiplied out. Okay, so here's where what we call, it's called trial and error. because you're going to maybe have to just try different combinations until you get to the correct factorization. So you want to think about maybe trying the 5x and 2x with the 2 and 3, see if that works. If that doesn't work, you want to try the 5x and the 2x with maybe the 6 and 1, see if that works. Okay, if that one doesn't work, then you're going to move on to trying the 10x and the x with the 2 and 3. Okay, and see if you can get that to work. If that doesn't work, then you would go on to using the 10x and the x with the 6 and the 1. Okay, and it just requires a lot of, like I said, trial and error, trying different things to see if you can figure out the combination that works. Okay, and like I said, you get really good at it as you practice it more. It just takes some patience, okay, and some practice to learn how to do this. So this one actually ends up being the 5x and the 2x with the 2 and the 3. Those are the combinations that work. So I'm going to go ahead and down here, I'm going to put the 5x and the 2x, okay? And then I need to just be careful how I place that 2 and 3, because if I place those incorrectly, it doesn't work. And let me show you the incorrect version first. If I place the 3 here and the 2 there, okay, then when I multiply this out, I'm going to get 10x squared, and I'm going to get a minus 10x, a minus 6x, and then a plus 6. And together there in the middle, I have a negative 16x, which is not what I need, right? I need a negative 19x. Okay, so that is not what we're looking for. There is the correct factorization. So let me get all this out of here since that's incorrect. And I need to just swap out, right? I need to swap out. I need to put the 2 here and the 3 there. When I multiply this out, I'm going to have 10x squared, and I'm going to have minus 15x minus 4x, and then plus 6. And there is that negative 19x that I need, right, to match what was in that original trinomial. All right, so there's only going to be one combination of numbers that correctly work for the factorization. And once again, just think of it as like a puzzle and just figuring out which number goes where, and then you have that correct factorization. Okay, so let's do a couple more here. All right, now this is number 5 here is when we have that minus sign in the back, so we have to watch out for that. And what you want to do is just think through your combinations of what you're dealing with here. So I have a 6y on the front, so I can do a 2y times a 3y, or I can have a 6y times a y. Both of those combinations would multiply to 6y squared. On the back, I want to think about a negative 7 and a 3, a positive 7 with a negative 3, okay, negative 21 with a 1, or a positive 21 with a negative 1. Okay, and then once again, you're just going to kind of trial and error figure this out, which ones actually end up working. You end up using the 6y, and you want to use the, let's see, the negative 7 with the positive 3. So you're going to have 6y and y in the front, okay? And then I need to have a minus 7 here and then a plus 3 here. And then if I multiply this out, okay, I have 6y squared, and then I have an 18y when I multiply the outside terms, a minus 7y for the inside, and then a minus 21. And there is that 11y that you would need. Okay, so once again, sometimes it seems like a mission impossible, but if you just keep trying, you'll be able to figure out the combination of numbers. Okay, so this last example here is actually a mission impossible. So I just wanted to show you one of these in the video. So if I look at my first term, 3x squared, I've got 3x and x. On the back end, I've got 7 and 7. I know that since I have that pattern with my plus sign at the back and the minus there, it's going to be minus, minus. And this one, no matter how hard I try, I just cannot get a factorization that actually works to give me that negative 16x in the middle. Okay, you can try and try and try, it's just not going to work. And so this is what we call a prime trinomial, and it cannot be factored, okay, in this manner. So sometimes you just have one that doesn't factor, okay, and so that can always be challenging because you're not sure if it doesn't factor or if you just couldn't figure out the correct combination of numbers. But like I said, you get much better at it with practice. The other pattern that we actually didn't talk about, and I'll just show you one of these really quick. So I guess this would be example 7, would be, let's say you have x squared plus 8x plus 7, and I am factoring that trinomial. Well, since it's plus plus, I know in my binomials I'm going to have a plus plus. Okay, so it's going to end up being x plus 7, x plus 1. Okay, so when you see these patterns here, okay, so when I have a trinomial with plus, plus, my factorization is going to be plus, plus in my binomials, okay? If I have a minus plus, it's going to be minus, minus, all right? Now, if I have a minus sign here at the end, my signs are going to be opposite, plus and minus, and those are a little bit trickier. You've kind of got to, work at it to get all the numbers in the correct spot. But at least you know the signs will be opposite, one plus and one minus, okay? And these little tricks help a little bit, just trying to, think through options with all your numbers. Okay, so work hard on this, post questions if you have them, and I'll see you in the next video.